Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakah Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 42nd chapter. Of these things be thou not ashamed, and accept no person to sin thereby. So here, he's about to list a few things to, as it says, not to be ashamed of, and as it says, don't let anybody cause you to sin by these matters. Now, let me just load this up here on my end, on my other screen real quick. Just bear with me. Okay. So it says here, of the law of the Most High and his covenant, and of judgment to justify the ungodly. So he's going to list a few things here, right? It's concerning the law of the Lord, right, and his covenant. Do not let anybody, don't accept, like, don't be a respecter of persons. Don't accept anybody, against this, right? That'll be going against these things that he's listing, or at the expense, right, of the law of the Most High. And be not ashamed to stand up, for the law of the Most High against, whatever it is anybody would say. And his covenant, and of judgment to justify the ungodly. Judgment is like in matters of judging a situation. Do not accept anybody's person to cause you to sin in perverting judgment, right, and justifying the ungodly. Of reckoning with thy partners and travelers, or of the gift of the heritage of friends. Okay, and in the GNTD, verse 3 says, sharing expenses with a business partner or a traveling companion, sharing an inheritance. Verse 4 says, of exactness of balance and weights, or of getting much or little, right? Of exactness of balance of weights, basically using accurate measurements, right? This is dealing with actual, like merchandise buying and selling. Because in the ancient world, when you went to buy certain products, they would weigh it out, right, with weights. So, and that's why it mentions here in the book of Proverbs 11, right, that a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Because they would use a false balance to defraud, or to cheat their neighbors, and not using accurate weights to make something that you're buying seem more expensive than it actually is, or vice versa. So don't let anybody cause you to sin in these matters. Verse 5, and of merchants indifferent selling, of much correction of children. Right, so let's read that verse 5 in GNTD. It says, making a profit, whether great or small, bargaining with a merchant. Right, don't sin thereby, or be ashamed of bargaining with a merchant, right, to try and bargain down a price. Of much correction of children. When you have a child, and you have to correct them regardless of how many times it takes, don't be ashamed of that, because it's going to be for both their and your benefit. And to make the side of an evil servant bleed, right? That is to beat, a disloyal or evil servant, even to the point where they bleed, if need be, so that they can get the message. Surely, sure keeping is good, where an evil wife is, and shut up where many hands are. So keep your goods, secured. If your wife is, if you can't trust her, okay, and shut up or seal up or treasure, hide, your good things, keep them safely locked up where many hands are, right? If there are too many people around, make sure you lock those things up. Deliver all things in number and weight, and put all in writing that thou givest out or receivest in, right? That's basically to take record of all things, so you can have the proof. In other words, the receipts. Be not ashamed to inform the unwise and foolish, and the extreme aged, that contendeth with those that are young. Thus shalt thou be truly learned and approved of all men living. Right? So when it mentions here, don't be ashamed to inform, right, to correct the unwise and foolish in their folly, and the extreme aged in contending with those that are young, right? Because it's unbecoming of them to stoop down to that level. And when you do it in wisdom. right? And that shows, as it says, thus shalt thou be truly learned and approved of men, of all men living. Reading this in the GNTD, it says, don't hesitate to correct someone who is acting foolishly, or an old man who goes around who goes around with prostitutes. Later on in one of the chapters, right, he mentions an old adulterer that doteth, right? It says here, all of this is worthwhile advice, and if you follow it, everyone will approve of your behavior. Verse 9, the father waketh for the daughter when no man knoweth, and the care for her taketh away sleep, right? Meaning like the concern, right? The thoughts that a father has concerning his daughter, and making sure that she's all right at all different stages of her life. Sometimes it causes him to lose sleep, thinking about it. When she is young, lest she pass away the flower of her age. And what that means by pass away the flower of her age, meaning like to lose like marriage opportunities, or the first step is like getting her married in the first place. But when she's married, right, and being married, lest she should be hated, right? He thinks about that, is this the right person, right? If she gets into this marriage, is she going to be mistreated by her husband in her virginity, right? Lest she should be defiled and gotten with child in her father's house, right? So he considers that too, in making sure that she is preserving her virginity, lest she, goes and commits adultery, right? Or well, in this case, it wouldn't be adultery if she's not married yet, but she becomes plays the whore in her father's house, you might say. Okay, so he considers that, and having an husband, lest she should misbehave herself, and that is the adultery, right, or being disloyal or dishonorable to her husband. And when she is married, lest she should be barren. So these are all concerns that drive sleep away from a father that thinks about it, about the well-being of his daughter. Keep a sure watch over a shameless daughter, lest she make thee a laughing stock to thine enemies. See, keep a sure watch, meaning like watch over her, intensely, right? Don't give her, that wiggle room to be able to even entertain any perverse or unseemly thoughts that will bring shame to you, and you become like a laughing stock to your enemies, right? They can use that as a means to malign you, right? To speak evil of you, being that you weren't able to raise up your own daughter properly, and a byword in the city, and a reproach among the people, and make thee ashamed before the multitude. Behold not everybody's beauty, and sit not in the midst of women. See, don't beholding here doesn't mean like look, right? Obviously, you're walking around, somebody's beautiful, you see it, but don't be captivated, right, in awe by every beautiful woman, and sit not in the midst of women. Don't constantly have your company be surrounded with women. Why? For from garments cometh a moth, and from women wickedness. See, so if you're constantly meddling, in the midst of them, wickedness is going to stick close by, and it won't be long before some issue arises, and here you are caught up in something. Better is the churlishness of a man than a courteous woman, right? The wickedness or the misbehavior of a man, right, is better than that of a courteous woman. A woman, I say, which bringeth shame and reproach. See, because outwardly she may appear that way, courteous, but her mind, can be, as Solomon said, as snares and nets, and evil-minded. That's why Solomon said, of a woman he found none. Of 1,000 women he found none. But of 1,000 men he found one. GNTD, a man's wickedness is better than a woman's goodness. Women bring shame and disgrace. Now, this isn't like a universal statement, right? Regardless of what a woman does, she's just this, but it's saying like compared to a wicked woman, right? A man's wickedness is better off than that of a woman, because she'll go to the fullest extent without any bounds, because she's driven by her emotions more so than she is with logic. Verse 15, I will now remember the works of the Lord and declare the things that I have seen. In the words of the Lord are his works. The sun that giveth light looketh upon all things, and the work thereof is full of the glory of the Lord. Right? When you look at the sun, even just comprehending how it moves, how it operates, how the Lord set it up, it's a glory of the Lord, right? It gives heat, it gives light, and many other things that we probably don't even fully understand. The Lord hath not given power to the saints to declare all his marvelous works, which the Almighty Lord firmly settled, that whosoever is might be established for his glory. Let's read that in the GNTD. It says, not even to his holy angels has the Lord given power to describe all his mighty deeds, even though he has given them power to stand unharmed in his glorious presence. So there are certain things that they will be revealed to us, all right, but not even the angels have the leeway or even the insight into to be able to expound on. That's why it says all the things that we've seen of the Lord are really just but a tiny fraction of his power. Verse 18, he seeketh out the deep in the heart, and considereth their crafty devices. For the Lord knoweth all that may be known, and he beholdeth the signs of the world. You see that? So he seeketh out the deep, right, and the heart, which is the mind, and considereth their crafty devices, right, their crafty plans, the thoughts, the intents. For the Lord knoweth all that may be known. There's nothing that is hid from the Lord. And he beholdeth the signs of the world, because he's ultimately the author of it, right? He declareth the things that are past and for to come, and revealeth the steps of hidden things, right? So any hidden, secrets the Lord brings to light. He declares the end from the beginning, as the scriptures say. And anything that's past, right? It says the Lord, God requireth that which is past. So whether past, present, future, nothing is hid from the Lord. No thought escapeth him, neither any word is hidden from him. And that's why the scriptures say that even a foolish thought is sin. So you gotta, and David always mentioned, right? Let the thoughts of my heart and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my God and my Redeemer, roughly paraphrasing. He hath garnished the excellent works of his wisdom, and he is from everlasting to everlasting. Unto him may nothing be added. See, you can't add anything to the Lord, right? And let's look at that word garnished here. Garnished. To decorate or embellish, right? To adorn. So putting it in context, right? He has decorated the excellency or the excellent works of his wisdom, which you see all around you. And he is from everlasting to everlasting, right? The Ancient of Days. There is no beginning of the Lord. There is no end. Unto him may nothing be added. You can't add anything. There's nothing where you can say, oh, the Lord is lacking over here. He created you. Who are you to add? Neither can he be diminished, and he hath no need of any counselor. And this is why people err when they try to put the Lord, they try to box him into their tiny brains, right? As far as their mind can imagine, they think, well, that's the limits. Because it's the limits of their mind, they try to put the Lord in that. No, he cannot be diminished, and he hath no need of a counselor. Nobody, who has counseled the Lord? Who has counseled the Most High? Oh, how desirable are all his works, and that a man may see even to a spark. Just imagine that, and that you think, right? Like, how is the kingdom going to be? Because all the things we see now, all the vast things we see now, you can take one subject, even water, and try to understand how water works, going down to the molecular level and all that. You could spend your whole life trying to understand the properties of water and still come short. And water is just one element of the Lord's creation that we see now. And all of the Lord's creations that we see now is just a spark of his works. So it's only fitting that the Lord is going to give us eternal life, because we're going to need eternity. And that still won't be in enough time to search out his mysteries and his works. All these things live and remain forever for all uses. And they are all obedient, right? The things the Lord has created, each has its own use, and they're all obedient to him. All things are double one against another, and he hath made nothing imperfect, right? Everything has its complement, right? You have life, you have death, you have tall, short, you have everything has its, its complement. Okay, you're hungry, you're full. One thing establisheth the good or another, and who shall be filled with beholding his glory? Let's read that in the GNTD, verse 25. Everything completes the goodness of something else. Could anyone ever see enough of his splendor? And that's why sometimes you don't even realize it, but when you take away something, then you see how, oh, this is what it was there for. Because sometimes the things that it's doing are unseen, but you feel the effects of it, but you don't see it happening until you stop feeling the effects of it. Then you realize, oh, this is why this is important. And that brings us to the end of the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 42nd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.